Hi, my name is Jeremy Hughes, and I am a sophomore at Fort Hays State University. And in class, we've talked a lot about different numbers and statistics, and of course the revolutions on what's going on in the world and what the world will look like in the future. And so my project was really inspired by James Nachtwey's TED Talk, and he said that media can really provide a different story. And I really want to provide a personal story to really put a name and a voice to those that wouldn't normally have it. And so I personally know two people here in Hays that have been making an impact and a change in people's lives in Africa. And so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to hear their answers to me interviewing them. And I hope that really they provide an inspiration on how college students here in Hays can even have a change and have an impact on people's lives across the world. Okay, hi guys. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Jessie.
And I'm Porfirio.
Well, thanks for your time today. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, like specifically about the refugee school that you guys know in Africa. And so, how did you come to know this school?
In 2006, Porfirio and I and a few others traveled to Nairobi for the summer. And while we were there, we met a refugee named Okonkwo, and he's from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we went back in 2007 for about 6 months, and while we were there, Okonkwo introduced us to the school.
And so, I know this is a pretty general question, but like, why would you say that you care about this school?
Well, I believe that I personally care because I have to. Somebody needs to do that. And I really live by this idea that to whom much has been given, much is expected. And so I have a responsibility to humanity to care, because I think that I've been the recipient of a lot of really great things, being a part of just the community that I'm a part of, and even just being an American in general. So I know that's why I care.
A lot in our class we've talked about like different revolutions of the world, and a couple of those would cover like corruption in the government and conflict in the world and affecting the population. And so I just am curious, like, how specifically have you seen these things affect the children in the refugee school?
That's a great question because most of the kids at the school are there as a result of war and as a result of conflict in the countries where they were born, and so they've had to flee and come to Kenya, and that's why they're at the school in the first place. But even within Kenya, there's a lot of corruption in the government. It's a fairly peaceful and fairly stable nation, but the government still doesn't have a lot of control over the people and even over themselves, and so there's a lot going on. A specific story that I remember them talking about was a little girl, and the school began having an eating program over the lunch hour because they were sending kids home to get food for lunch, but it was very dangerous for the kids because when they were coming back from school, sometimes the children would be attacked. And I remember a specific story about a girl who was raped when she was coming back to school, and they weren't able to take this case to the police because they were refugees, because they knew that the police wouldn't just take advantage of their refugee status and they wouldn't give them the concern or the care that they needed. And so there was no way for justice to be served for this little girl. It's just something they had to deal with.
So despite those kind of situations, or despite all the barriers in these kids' lives, like, how do you see, or do you see, an overall desire in these kids for an education or a better life? Like, are they aware that there is a better life out there?
I think these children are very aware of what they don't have, but sometimes it's really difficult for them to see beyond the everyday life struggles of just the real basic needs being met, and so they're still really fighting for survival when it comes to just, food, water, shelter, and clothes. Like, that's something that they struggle for each and every day, and so they know the value of an education. There's an example of the children that we were working with in that school where there was a small desk, and there was we would put probably 2 children to this desk here in America, but there was about 7 kids to a desk with 1 textbook, and all of them peering in, reading and really trying to gain as much education as possible. So they see it as valuable, and not to mention the fact that doesn't guarantee that there will be a job or any opportunities for success, considering that they're refugees. But there is a real sense of freedom when you have an education, and I think they value that because they can sustain themselves in some ways. Just being able to read and write there is a level of confidence and security that comes with that. Because I'm certain that they're hoping that if their status or the situation doesn't change there, they still have an opportunity to go back to their country someday, hopefully with peace taking place, and be able to be productive citizens of society where they come from.
What is like if you know like what your observation has been, what is like a main cause of why there's so many kids there at the refugee school?
Like I said, most of the countries where these kids are coming from, they're coming from about 6 different countries surrounding Kenya, but there is war going on in those countries.